Okay, good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lee Howarth. I'm a director of product management at Ping. It's my pleasure to introduce Melissa Otte for this next session. I think many of you are going to find this session really, really cool. Melissa is a principal architect at Ping. For those of you that have worked with her, you'll know that she is a phenomenal resource. A lot of experience, just understands this market, understands this technology, and understands the business challenges really, really well. So, Melissa, off you go.
All right, thank you. All right, thanks. That was quite a build-up. I hope I live up to it. Today I'm going to walk through a case study I did with one of my customers. They're a major retailer. As you can imagine, they have a few suppliers. We'll get into some of those numbers. And they were looking for a way to be able to manage the identities of all of their suppliers. And when I say at scale, I mean at scale. So if we talk a little bit about the challenges that this retailer faced, we kind of tackled these in order. The first one was we have all these identities that we have to manage, and there's huge cost and huge risk associated with managing these identities. Excuse me. So the cost itself is, they own the identities, they've got the usernames, they've got the passwords. How do we do password resets? We forgot a password. I don't remember my username anymore. They found that they had to have staff to be able to allow the suppliers to call in, manage those resources, help them with their password recovery, those kinds of things. And it was very, very expensive to maintain those identities. And then, of course, there's the risk with turnover, right? You've got the guys who are moving on to new jobs, no problem, they're not going to present any risk. But then you get the guys who maybe get terminated, and they might see if they can cause a little trouble on their way out, that kind of thing. And if you don't have that provisioning process in place to make things happen immediately, of course, there is that risk there. Or, you get someone there on vacation, the message doesn't get through, and suddenly you have someone with access to your system that shouldn't. So, we looked at that, and, that's easy, federation, right? You put the ownership back on each of those suppliers to manage their own identities. So, all right, well, great, we'll do federation. We have 70,000 suppliers, over 100,000 individual identities. That's a lot of SAML connections to make. I don't know how many of you have done the metadata exchange, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, and sometimes it's 4 weeks by the time you email back and forth. Excuse me, and you figure out, all the different switches and options in SAML you're going to do, not to mention maintaining certificates. Each of those certificates, every 3 years, they're rolling. Excuse me. You have to, the sheer magnitude of the number of connections was a little overwhelming. I said, well, I think we can overcome that. I think I know a way, using the Ping infrastructure, that we can overcome the massive number of connections you have to have. We'll get these guys all hooked up via SAML. Okay, well, most of these suppliers are not federation enabled. They don't have a federation infrastructure. A lot of them don't even have a directory, right? They have an iPad. They have maybe 2 computers in the corner, one for taking orders and one for placing orders. So we kind of threw them into 3 categories. We said, okay, we've got these enterprise customers, right? They're running PingFederate. They've got whatever form of federation capabilities. Then there's that next class. They might have an Active Directory. They may even use Kerberos. They're not federation capable. So they're identity aware. They understand the importance of identity, but they don't have the infrastructure to do the federation. And then there's those small businesses, right? You've got Susie, who makes candles in her basement, and she is a regional supplier to this retailer. She wants to continue to get into the Supplier Portal. She likes doing business with a major retailer, but she's not going to have federation capabilities. It's not feasible for her. So I said, all right, we can solve all that. We're going to use the Ping platform to solve all that. So the solution we used all centered around PingOne, which is our hosted PingFederate architecture. And there were 4 steps to making all this happen. First is PingOne for SaaS. PingOne for SaaS is going to allow you to take an application, either that is already SAML enabled or one that needs to be SAML enabled, and hook them up into the PingOne infrastructure. The benefit here is you're going to create one connection from the PingOne cloud to your application. Despite the fact that you're going to have 70,000 suppliers, you're maintaining a single connection on the supplier side. They like the sound of that. Any of you who have set up those connections like the sound of a single connection into your application. Then creating those connections. So metadata exchange, getting it all configured, now becomes an exercise in data entry. So quite literally, in a 5-minute time period, you could set up 15 connections into your application. Maybe more, depends on how fast you type. And we're going to get into the details of this in future slides. I'm kind of giving you the highlights now. And then in order to let the suppliers connect, you're going to send them an email, and that one email is going to contain everything they need to know to be able to connect to your application, making it a very hands-off process for the retailer and putting a lot of that responsibility out onto the suppliers. So we have our 3 categories of suppliers. Those who are already federation capable, they're going to set up a SAML connection from their current federation architecture. They're going to leverage PingOne to be our SAML switch in the sky and be able to federate their users into the Supplier Portal application. Those identity-aware suppliers, we're going to leverage the Active Directory they're already using, potentially the Kerberos they're already using, and I'll use that to create that SAML into the application. And then for those small businesses, Susie making her candles, or Tim the taco guy who makes these specialty plates that hold taco shells in place, those guys, we're going to give them a PingOne account, and we're going to give them a directory. We're going to host it at PingOne. They're going to maintain those users. They're going to be responsible for removing the terminated users. They're going to have their own directory that they can use, and they can federate into this application. So even those onesie-twosie mom and pops or small businesses will be able to do that federation. So let's take a look at how this gets set up. Step 1 is hooking up that application into the PingOne infrastructure. In order to do that, first you have to create your account. That's pretty straightforward. I think anybody in this room could easily do that. We're going to then create that connection between their PingFederate instance and their PingOne instance. Again, you don't have to have PingFederate. They were already there, so that was easy to do. And that is a matter of logging into the administrative console and doing your metadata exchange. You own both sides of that. So that part usually goes pretty quickly. You know, these switches that you flipped on both sides of that. Once you have that SAML connection set up, then you're going to add your application. And any of you who have worked with me know that my imagination is about this big, so I called my application Melissa, because I could remember that. So I set up my application, and you do notice up there that we have the capability to create different visibilities for your application. So this major retailer did not want to publish this app into our app catalog and have everybody who logs in go, oh yeah, I'd like to sell in their stores, right? So it's a private application by invitation only. And then once they have that set up, then they're going to fill out the attribute contract. What do we need to know about each user who's federating in order for them to be able to use the application? So in this case, I've got 6 default properties for them are required just to have an attribute contract to work with. So that's getting the application out there. It's ready. It's now able to accept SAML assertions. So the next step is to invite these 70,000 entities to be able to connect into their application. So I promised you it was an exercise in data entry, and if you look in the upper left-hand corner of this, that's exactly what it is. It's 3 fields. First, you're going to choose which application. In this use case, I actually have 2 out there. I'm just going to work with my aptly named Melissa app. And then you need to have the email address of your contact at that company, and then a unique customer identifier for each one of those entities. So you'll have to come up with either a scheme or some imaginative way to give a unique identifier to each customer. Once that's done, hidden kind of below here, there's a button that says finished. That is the extent of creating the connection on the supplier side. So we already have the connection done. All the work that you would have done importing their metadata, certificate management, all that becomes data entry. 2 fields and a checkbox. So your service provider side is done. On the identity provider side, there's a little more work that they need to do. Well, in the use case of this customer or this retailer, they They chose to go with an email invitation. There's several different ways that you can use to invite the suppliers in. We're going to focus on the email invitation here. So by default, we're going to give you the complete email that we'll send. It includes all the links that the supplier will need to be able to set up their account and create the federation to the application. This customer chose to start with this and then customize it. So they're throwing their own logo into the email so that it doesn't look like it's Ping branded. And then they also included a PDF. And that PDF starts out, are you federation capable? Follow these steps. Do you have an Active Directory but not federation? Follow these steps. Did you not understand those first two questions? Follow these steps. So the three different categories of users that may be out there were all addressed in this single PDF, and that got attached to each one of the emails that went out. So you're going to go through, do your data entry, get that email sent out or whatever way you're using, whatever method you're using to connect them. And then within your PingOne console, you'll be able to see exactly which of your customers have completed the connections on their side, maybe which ones are having some trouble, which ones you may need to resend the email to, call them up, figure out, hey, you need to get this going. So even though you put it on them, you still have visibility into whether or not they've followed through on that. And that is the entirety of the work on the supplier side. So simplifying it from setting up 70,000 SAML connections, managing 120-some thousand individual identities, to data entry and monitoring the account level status. So significantly reduce the effort there. And we're just going to walk through what was that experience then for the suppliers who were invited to connect. So we'll start with those that already had federation capabilities. These guys were not terribly overwhelmed by this request, right? They're going to use their existing federation infrastructure as the identity bridge into PingOne. They're going to create SAML assertion that goes to PingOne, and then they're going to fill out that attribute contract. You remember, our retailer already said these are the 6 fields we need, so they're going to direct from the SAML assertion I sent which 6 fields need to go to that retailer. So again, we're going to send SAML into PingOne. He's going to be a SAML switch. He's going to take that data, create a SAML switch, and we're in the supplier portal. These guys are doing this regularly, not overwhelming for them. They were pretty content. The identity-aware architecture, this is a really, the story started differently and it has evolved over the last year into an extremely elegant solution that these guys can use. So for these identity-aware guys, the instructions say, you're going to log in, you're going to create your account. When you get to this screen, I'm going to say I want to use PingFederate and I'm a new customer. From there, we have an installer wizard that takes over, and anyone who hasn't been to PingOne and lived this experience, I encourage you to do it. It is slick. It is really slick. So you're going to choose your PingFederate, you're going to choose the most recent release, and you're going to say you're new. And it's going to walk you through a wizard. It asks, I think, 5 or 6 questions, including, where is your Active Directory? Do you use Kerberos? Do you have an SPN set up? What is your network range? And you're done. You click finish, it's going to install your software. It's going to install it as a service. It is going to, and I'm going to get really Ping here for a second, so I apologize if you're not familiar with Ping. It's going to set up your adapters. So it's going to create an HTML form adapter, it's going to create a Kerberos adapter, it's going to create the composite adapter. It's going to create your policies. Am I on network? Am I off network? Am I on a mobile device? And it's going to put all of those policies and adapters together and create a connection from PingFederate to PingOne, all in 5 questions. It is slick. So at that point, they have a connection. They have their Active Directory. They are federation capable. They're out at PingOne. Then they log into PingOne, and it says, hey, retailer wants you to connect to the supplier portal. So here are the attributes that they need to know. Click, click, click. You fill in the blanks, and you are hooked up and federating into their infrastructure. And it takes, okay, well, I've done it a few hundred times, so I can do it in under 10 minutes. Maybe 30 minutes for someone who's never seen it before that may have to go find out what are my network ranges, those kinds of things. But very, very slick process for doing that. So these identity-aware guys, piece of cake. We got those guys in. Small businesses, they're going to get the email. They're going to read the instructions. They're going to go, I don't understand what those first 2 things were. So they're going to come in, they're going to get to the same screen once they fill in some basic registration information. And they're going to state that they want to create a PingOne directory. They're going to do a little data entry. They're going to tell us who their users are, or maybe it's just the one user. Get usernames, assign some passwords to them, or invite them to connect and create passwords. Once that directory is set up, it is exactly the same. Hey, retailer would like you to be able to federate into their application. Click here from the directory. Here's my first name, last name. Here's my email address, all from the directory. And again, it's just a drop down, choose the fields that you want to work with. So these guys not only become identity aware, they also become federation capable. And then they can leverage that architecture to get into the supplier portal. These guys are happy. They don't have to try to track down the clerks at the retailer every time they need a different kind of access or someone new to have access. They don't have to give the new guy their username and password, which isn't supposed to happen, but it does. They're able to fully manage those users on their own. So the end result is that everyone is federating in. So we have 70,000 connections, and I only drew 3 lines, but that represents 70,000 different connections into our PingOne cloud, which results in a single connection from PingOne into the PingFederate identity bridge at the retailer, allowing them all to federate into their supplier portal. Each one of those suppliers, self-categorized, if you will. I'm a small business, I need some help, I want to have a directory hosted for me. Nope, I've got a directory, I'm identity aware, I've got that set up, or I got this, give me your metadata, let's just get this configured. So they're federating in, and full access to the supplier portal. And then potentially as next steps, we're going to look at what other SAML applications do these retailers need to have access to. All right, so are there any questions?
So how did you manage roles for the suppliers?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
How did you manage roles to the applications for the suppliers in a self-service manner?
Sure, so it's going to end up being an attribute in the SAML contract. So their administrators, it was one of the attributes in there was, is this person being logged in as an administrator or as a user? So it was all set on the sides of the suppliers. Then they're allowed additional options within the application.
This sounds great. Is there any way to see a demo or some sort of live example of this?
I did promise a demo, and what ended up happening was that I don't have time to do this entire thing in 20 minutes, including a demo. So I actually have finagled a way to, I have booth duty for the next 2 hours. I'll have my laptop there, and if you want a demo of all of this or any piece of this, please come by the Ping booth. I'm happy to show that to you.
Do the backend applications have to be SSL enabled, or can they be protected behind a ping access?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Do the backend applications have to be SSL enabled, or can they be reverse proxied behind the ping access?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, they can. At the time that I worked with this retailer, they were not a ping access customer. PingFederate was the entire infrastructure, and then they were using a WAM integration kit into their portal and application suite. But yeah, that could absolutely be ping access back there.
How to provision to SaaS application the suppliers users. This slide shows about federation, but some application needs to be provisioned user's account before single sign-on. How to synchronize user accounts from the enterprise or small business to the SaaS applications?
How do you synchronize it? Let me back up one.
Yeah, for example, Google required to be synchronized user account prior to federated. So how to synchronize user
Oh, for the
accounts?
third-party SaaS, where they're
Yeah.
federating suppliers back
Yes,
out
yes,
again?
yes.
Right, in that case, the federation between the supplier's identity bridge and any of those SaaS applications, they're actually acting as an agent of the supplier, or excuse me, of the retailer. So the retailer is responsible for any provisioning activity that would need to be coordinated between their identity bridge. But did I answer that question? Okay.
So if I'm the service provider and I've got my PingOne environment that I've bought and managed, and I have one of these small businesses that are coming in, so they're going to use Ping Directory, which is a separate product. Am I asking the small business to pay for a license for that, or do I pay for a license for that?
I know how to hook them together. Licensing issues, anybody out here want to take that one?
It's included.
I do my best to avoid those kinds of questions.
So if a similar question, but not going to ask about licensing.
Okay.
If that small business setting up in the Ping directory gets multiple invitation from various people on the right side, do they have to set up multiple directors, or
They
can
do
they keep?
not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so what happens is when they get that email invitation, when they click the first link to go ahead and create that account, it's going to say, or log in with your existing account. When they log in with an existing account, the new invitation to that next application is added, and then they have multiple applications available to them through that same account.
First of all, thank you. Great job. The question that I had, and we're trying to get ahead, is particularly when it's specifically to your IDaaS and creating policies around where the users are coming in from, right? And yes, there is, at some point, we do need to depend on the SIM solution, but do you guys have anything that perhaps monitors a mom and pop where, they're coming in from a connection from, the Americas and then the Europe and then, the APAC area in a very short amount of time that would give us some sort of an indication, perhaps of a compromise or anything like that? Does the IDaaS has any kind of reporting functionality? Yes, I understand we would probably play that into a SIM solution and get better metrics out of that, but out of the gate, does it provide anything? Was that question clear?
Sure, and there's a couple different ways to answer that. As the retailer, you wouldn't necessarily have visibility into that. I think you do have access to the source IP. As the identity provider, so if I am that small business and I want to see the activity that I have, then yes, you'd be able to track where that's coming from. You can restrict IPs that are able to connect in, those kinds of things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out, in a small amount of time, we're seeing connections from a whole different ranges. How do we mitigate that, right, or get in front of it? Whether it be some sort of a compromised credential or other events that we're targeting.
You're saying transactional risk calculation. So if you're traveling 2,000 miles an hour, chances are you're probably not a real person.
Right. Yes, as far as the reporting capabilities go with that, the raw data is available. The reporting capabilities on the IDP side, they would be able to see that. I don't believe on the service provider side that would be available as a report. I could be wrong. But you would have the raw data available to be able to track that.
We are actually building out some policy within the IDaaS service that's going to look at a lot of things like this.
Yep.
So, just kind of the behavioral piece based on, geofencing, all those kind of things. It's all things that we're actually building out right now.
Whether it's fencing or velocity or that's what I'm really interested in.
Yep. So final question. think we're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.